Next is going to be Taiwan taking on Singapore. There's a lot of implications this match. If Singapore wins, they still have a very slight chance to potentially make it into Stage 2. Taiwan, though, looking to go ahead and just put a ribbon on this, go 3-1, tie up Mexico, and essentially cinch their way out of this group. Certainly a very complicated one. We see, however, Singapore represented by Sequinox, Crumpled, Aaron, and XNVX, while Taiwan is represented by Tom60229, Pinping Ho, AHQ Roger, and Malagos Taiwan.
This is a very close group. Mexico is sitting in first place with a 3-1 record. Taiwan currently at 2-1. Singapore at 1-2. So if Singapore takes the win, they will actually be tied in match score with Taiwan at 2-2. So this one is very close. Certainly a lot riding on this match for Singapore in particular. If Taiwan gets the win, they will shore up their spot in Stage 2. But if Singapore takes the win, things are going to get interesting in this group.
Big question to me coming into the series is, are we once again going to see Pimping Ho not play Shaman? The Shaman god himself played Druid last time.
It's blasphemous.
It's sacrilege.
I can count on only a few things in this world. The sky is blue, basketball players are tall, and Pinping Ho plays Shaman.
Whoa. Muggsy Bogues is like 5'1". We got there. I keep track of this as a guy who's 5'8". I'm like, short basketball players, like back in high school, is like, we got game.
Motivation.
We can do this.
You can't dunk, but you can hit free throws.
We pass the ball really well.
You know what? Footwork matters.
Yeah. Good with our hands, good with our feet. So that's the value of point guards in basketball. But to your point, it is certainly an unwritten rule in Hearthstone that the Shaman god must play Shaman. We see here, though, he's not even bringing Shaman this week. Pinping Ho, Rogue, and Priest.
What are we even doing here, Rob?
I don't know. 2017 has honestly been a very confusing year all over the board, so this is just adding to it. Malagos Taiwan, however, has that Shaman, and up until this point, he's been playing a lot of what you consider the more control-oriented decks, which is befitting somewhat of Malagos Taiwan's caliber and pedigree as a competitive player. He loves those control-oriented decks, but what we see here in this first match, Sequinox is going to be playing against Tom60229 with Mage and Warlock versus Mage and Paladin. So realistically, Sequinox is going to be playing Mage.
Yes, so Sequinox will be on Mage. Tom60229, honestly, either the Mage or the Paladin would be good choices for him here. And then XNVX obviously not playing this week, so Sequinox is taking his place as the representative in both of the first two games. So Tom60229, the man plays a lot of Mage. Everything he touches turns to Mage. But I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he brought Paladin, knowing pretty much 100% that Sequinox will be bringing his own Mage.
All right, so you're saying Mage? Or you're saying Paladin?
I think it's going to be Paladin.
All right,
I just have an inkling it's going to be Paladin.
I'm saying Mage prediction. Show me the picks. Hate to see that if you're a core fan.
Pinping Ho didn't bring Shaman. Tom60229 brought Mage.
And he's playing it. So just so you're keeping score, Tom60229 on the broadcast has brought Freeze Mage, and then after that loss, brought Gunther Mage. So he's certainly someone who kind of specializes in Freeze Mage. There's a caliber of player. We've seen Dr. Hippie poke some of the other characters, George C., who say, we are Freeze Mage, and that's what we do.
We are Freeze Mage, hear us freeze things.
Tom certainly amongst that group, so we see the players getting ready. Sequinox, now we spoke to him in Singapore's win against, I want to say it was against Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And Sequinox was a very animated character. He brought a very unusual priest deck. He did actually play Singleton Priest, so...
It was fun. It worked.
It was good.
Wonders. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Sequinox thus far in this Singapore team. Again, they're still technically in it, I want to say, by a very slim margin, so they're going to have to win this, and if they can win 3-0, that's going to help their case a lot.
If they win this, and then they win their next one, they'll go 3-2, and I think then they'll have actually a very good chance of making the cut. So especially since looking at the team from Taiwan, they have so much more experience on the global stage and the Hearthstone Championship Tour. For Singapore to win this one would be maybe not quite as surprising as Peru beating the United States 3-0, but still a bit of an upset nonetheless.
Certainly something Taiwan does not want to see happen. They do not want to go into a situation where they're 2-2.
You don't want it to be close. You want to just get those wins, secure your spot in Stage 2.
They've been very vocal about the fact that they're going on to Stage 2, and they fully expect to be in those final 4 teams that are competing at the LAN finals later this year. So Singapore certainly has a chance to throw a wrench and all that and drag Taiwan down to the 2-2 area of the bracket.
The gray area. I don't think Tom wants to see that. He much prefers, I don't know.
Winning?
Frozen area?
Yeah, certainly. All right, game 1 here that we are going to see what has the makings of... Again, we talked about it. It's difficult to figure out exactly what Mage is playing. But the Mana Worm for Sequinox certainly gives us some hints that it's probably a more aggressive variant. For Taiwan, this opening hand suggests that it could be Gunther Mage is certainly common in, or sorry, Meteor is certainly common in Gunther Mage, but we also see it in the Burn Mage occasionally.
Yeah, it is definitely possible to see it in both cases, and in some cases, Meteor's being cut from Gunther Mage altogether. So, gonna have to see what these shape up to be.
Well, both players brought their turn 1 Mana Worm, so it's a fair fight at this point. Obviously, Sequinox having the initiative is important, but Tom does have the coin, and the coin is very powerful for mages.
It absolutely is. You can choose to coin out either the Frostbolt or the Arcanologist this turn. You're not playing Mana Worm, because if Sequinox has Frostbolt in hand, then you're losing so much initiative that Mana Worm is getting in there for at least 2 damage, and you've got a problem at that point. So you might as well just kill this Mana Worm via Frostbolt this turn, save your Mana Worm to be utilized at a later time, or just go with the Arcanologist and hope that Sequinox doesn't have a Frostbolt. Then you can challenge with a Hero Power next turn. So even though this is only turn 1, there are a lot of potential lines that can really set the tone for how this matchup is going to go. Both of these decks have a fair amount of early game that you need to get in a significant amount of damage with to be able to close the game up neatly with burn damage in the later game.
You really do want to kind of set your opponent into that 19-20 range with just chip damage from the board, and then kind of go from there with the getting the offense going via the Fireballs, the Frostbolts, Firelands Portals. A lot of times that Firelands Portal minion is not check. Medivh's Valet, just drawn by Taiwan, is another huge source of chip damage, both for doing 3 damage coming in and the 2 damage you're going to get as it hits. But yeah, at least at this point, this is all about just jockeying for board position, and Sequinox feels like he's also just playing that Burn Mage we saw earlier from Peru. The one Polymorph tech in there has been extremely powerful, and well, I think we're getting the same news from Tom.
It may very well be a mirror. Tom elected to go with the Mana Worm, essentially saying that the coin is more valuable than that 1 mana minion. Now knowing what he's up against with Singapore, assuming that there's probably 2 copies of Ice Block in the build, and that this game is going to go quite long regardless, coin could give him more initiative than a Mana Worm.
All right, Tom needs to sit on that Swamp Ooze because Medivh is so common in the specific versions of these decks that at least he's playing and what he would expect his opponent to possibly have. So as much as Swamp Ooze can sometimes just be a 3-2 you put out for 2 mana, in this particular situation, you're just going to probably hold it until later on in the game just to make sure you can deal with the Medivh. And there we see it from Sequinox, the Medivh in hand. So certainly going to have to be very diligent with the Weapon Destruction. And it'll be interesting to see if Sequinox runs Weapon Destruction as a tech card, because if he does not and he's unable to challenge the Medivh in that mid to late game, the Medivh can go off and make it very difficult for Sequinox's Mage to win.
I think that Weapon Destruction is probably the most common tech choice in every deck across the board right now. Hungry Crab you're seeing a little bit of, but Weapon Destruction just works so efficiently against Warriors, Paladins, and Mages now, even though that seems silly. But Medivh the Guardian is the only large form of minion generation for these decks. You have your slight bit of early game, you have Elise in some cases, you have your Firelands Portal minions, and then you have Alexstrasza and whatever board you generate from Medivh. So to be able to shut down that final push of large minions is incredibly valuable.
All right, so the Glyph comes down here, and Sequinox is going to be able to just pick up another tool to give him potentially extended bird reach or board removal, and just says, hey, you know what, 8 mana Pyroblast, we take that here. Alexstrasza creeping around the deck somewhere. There's a natural copy of Pyroblast, so it really just is increasing your potential burn window. And if things really do get too bad, you at least have an 8 mana 10 damage removal spell if you absolutely have to use it like that. So definitely that was the pick between Arcane Explosion and Forbidden Flame.
We're never one to turn down a sneaky 10 damage for 8 mana. Remember when Pyroblast actually just used to cost 8 mana? Now you need the Glyph into it to get that value.
I really just want to sit down new Hearthstone players and just kind of be like, gather up, children. Let me tell you a tale
the Hearthstone of yore.
Of Moon's Aggro Mage.
Oh my god.
That was brutal back in the day.
If you thought Buzzard Hounds was bad.
I mean, that was bad too back in the day. We see Harrison picked up for Sequinox, so there's the Weapon Destruction for both players. The major difference here is cost the body, and Sequinox will be able to draw more cards. Now, back in the day, for true Freeze Mage, you know, thinking back to BlizzCon 2015, fatigue was a big thing. That was where a lot of the Freeze Mage decks ended up going, and that was how they were decided. That is really not the case anymore. So drawing 3 cards a lot of times can just be a way to get yourself ahead, draw more of those all-important tools, draw into more of the burn you need, and it can be a big deal versus the Swamp Ooze, which you're running because it is more flexible. And perfect answer to Atiash says you are not going to be generating any minions off that weapon. He gets an Ungoro pack, Arcane Intellect, and second copy of Pyroblast for his trouble.
I mean, Sequinox's hand is looking quite heavy, but I don't think you're too upset about that. Any resources are good resources in a control mirror. But the thing about
resources?
Okay, maybe not any resources.
What if you drew Warlock cards?
A couple of Wisps. It depends on the Warlock cards.
Sure.
Missile Enforcers, yeah, okay. I'll take them.
Twisting Nether? Okay, we take that.
That's not bad. Doom? Yeah, sure.
All right, Nesting Rock off the Firelands portal. And just at this point, Taiwan's thinking, okay, well, we lost the Atiash, but we do get to keep a 7-7. We're pushing some pressure forward, so certainly not a totally bad deal. All right, convenient clear for the board.
This matchup is it's quite interesting, actually, because you have Medivh's essentially neutralized. You neutralize the early game with your early game removal. So you're net 0 at this point, and then where do you really find the edge? You Primordial Glyph into an additional Pyroblast, so there's the extra burn for Singapore, meaning that they'll likely be able to burn Taiwan down to 1, pop the block sooner than Taiwan is able to pop theirs, but there's certainly methods of life gain in the form of Alexstrasza. If there's a Cabal Courier in the list, you can find a greater healing potion, any number of things from the priest class.
Well, as you said, one of the bigger variables is that Primordial Glyph because it's something you really can't plan around. We see here Primordial Glyph delivering the discounted mirror entity, so now Sequinox may be hesitant to just go ahead and jam the Medivh, which was otherwise looking like a pretty juicy play.
Yeah.
Go ahead and get the Medivh going. You've got the very powerful Pyroblasts. You can certainly just start generating big minions, but if the Medivh comes out, it is going to award Taiwan a 7-7, so curious to see if Sequinox decides to go ahead and just play around it, realize that what was played was the discounted spell. Oftentimes, it is easy to lose track of that, but that is hopefully why you have the whole team on chat. And you're thinking, okay, one guy's responsibility is to watch the glyphed cards.
If Sequinox does essentially give Tom a 7-7 with charge, then Tom will be popping the block before Sequinox can pop Tom's.
It's important to note, as we said earlier, Tom has the Swamp Ooze too, so the likelihood that Atiash is going to see a whole lot of value, not very high. And Sequinox just decides he's going to say it's not Mirror Entity. It is Mirror Entity, actually. So as you said, 7-7 with charge, essentially, and then the Swamp Ooze comes down, and Taiwan's going to be able to put forth a lot of pressure.
Okay, so how does Tom want to go about this? At most this turn you have 17. You'd like to pop the block as close to 1 as possible. Meaning that you could go Medivh's Valet plus Medivh to face this turn, don't hero power, and then Pyroblast would set to 1 next turn, but then you wouldn't be able to pop. Yeah, you've got time. Might as well just...
No, I mean, this is completely fine for them. They have cleared the board. They're still at 27 health. They're pushing the agenda. Did not play around a potential second meteor off the Primordial Glyph. It's worth pointing out there. So could have been a potential for a little bit of a punish. But we do know that card off of Primordial Glyph was just a Pyroblast. So yeah, it's just back and forth. There's so few minions and there's so much removal and so many things that interact with the board that it's hard to actually stick minions in this matchup.
Yeah.
Because you're not really going to be able to overwhelm either version of this Burn Mage.
So really, you need to sequence your burn in the most efficient way possible. And you would like to put your opponent down to the reality of having to play Ice Block to survive. If you can get to that point and continue to apply pressure, it's very unlikely that they'll be able to launch a counter assault. And you should shore up the game from there. The counterspell sitting in Sequinox's hand actually is very relevant right now. If he's able to counterspell one of the high-value burn spells in Tom's hand, he could deny Tom trying to shut out the game.
Have we seen a duplicate of anything? I just want to make sure. I don't think we've seen a duplicate of anything, and I'm dumb. It's a second valet right there.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there like maybe a weird outlier chance where this is, Brian Kibler's been playing Kazakus Mage, maybe?
Oh, God, Rob.
Sequinox
There's
is a
enough
big
to
fan.
think about here. If this is Kazakus Mage, that just looks exactly like Discover Mage.
We saw Kazakus Priest from him last time,
We
so
did.
there's
He's brought
precedent.
crazier things.
there's certainly room to dream.
Here, the most wild we're getting is Pyros. Look at him. He's majestic.
He is certainly a card that has picked up value just lately, as some of the players, I believe mostly in North America, have kind of been sticking him into some of those decks because of all the value he represents.
I wonder.
So Kuja's Volcanic Potion ping here. Just go ahead and clear up that board. Play down the Mana Worm after. It's important to not just set your Mana Worm to 1 there for no reason.
I mean, if you are Tom, you know that you're going to be outvalued for the rest of this game entirely. Your one edge was that you got in 2 attacks with Medivh. I would have been very tempted to just try to close out this game quickly. I think that I might have directed the Medivh's Valley to face with the intention of or maybe Pyroblasted last turn with the intention of Medivh's Valet plus hero power to pop block this turn, because you can remove minions all you want, but you know that Singapore has an Ungoro pack online, you know that they still have a glyphed card in their hand, and you have no more minion generation in your deck. So how much time can you really afford to take?
It's certainly a consideration, and it's one of those points where the basics of Hearthstone teach you that what you want to be doing is just clearing minions, playing your minions, and then when you get them low, that's when you use the burn. But to that point that you just brought up, you kind of have to read that situation and say exactly what you said. There's just more value in the deck of Sequinox, and when do you just decide to go? At this point, in order to get rid of the 6/6 Pyros, you have to waste a Fireball, and then you know it's probably just coming down on the next turn as a 10/10. So are you addressing it at this point, or are you just going to start slinging burn and saying, like, well, hope they don't have Alexstrasza?
I mean, I'm nowhere near the mage player that Tom60229 is, so I know he's got a plan going here, but if you had Pyroed last turn, you would have been able to Medivh's Valet ping this turn. You would have popped the block. There'd be a Harrison on board, but the Harrison likely still wouldn't have been able to put your block popped. And even if it had, then you'd be a little bit screwed because you don't have second block. But
I think Tom's plan.
I don't know.
I think Tom's plan was just jump there, make a leap of faith to say we're going to have the damage. Alexstrasza's not going to be there. We just kind of have to play to an actual win condition because we just can't keep throwing basically money into Pyros. This investment is not going to yield anything.
I mean, now he can glyph into pretty much any amount of damage and be just fine in closing out this game over 2 turns.
All right, another glyph there. More burn. Yeah, it's just time to start shucking. You have a bunch of damage, and then there's going to be that counter spell. So
that's not a liar.
Sequinox making it a play like, okay, whatever's left must be just bare bones essential important resources for my opponent. Now is the time to counterspell, and when you play the counterspell, there's a couple of different ways you can approach it. In other matchups, you can just say, okay, I'll play it in the early game off of Kirin Tor Mage. It's free. It's going to act as disruption. Whereas in this matchup, Sequinox makes a read, okay, this could be potentially a back-breaking counterspell because there's really nothing that Tom can just throw away.
Yeah, counterspelling the glyph means that Tom needs to find some additional method of damage to be able to pop the second block from Sequinox. And again, I would have to go back and look at if Tom had played the Blast and then the Valet plus hero power to pop block.
Okay, there's
Prior,
Alexstrasza.
if he would have, if Sequinox would have had the damage on the backswing, I don't know for sure, but there were a couple of ways that he could have played this out.
Alexstrasza is really big here.
If you,
this was basically what Tom was hoping not to see is the Alexstrasza because he wanted to get more resources. He has unfortunately had to commit the burn to face and just say, okay, you don't have Alexstrasza. Tom sees it off the top, and Tom just chuckles. Tom's seen this before. He's played thousands of games.
He's no stranger to the Mage Mirror. It had to be either Alexstrasza or Ice Block coming down this turn. And the Alexstrasza just represents more on board than Sequinox could have put down with the block in cooperation, and it is essentially immunity anyway.
Okay, just going to go ahead and truck through the Firelands portal. Had that been Leroy, you could have potentially pushed a lot of extra damage there. You would have set your opponent to 4, and then you have outs, assuming the Ice Block doesn't come out. But this is still good. You're still pushing damage, and you're still forcing your opponent to have answers there. Again, there's no reason to put it into the Pyros there.
Okay, so Firelands can go down on the 6/5. You can't pop the block then. yeah, you might as well just keep your block up. You don't need to fire lands. Immunity is immunity.
And then the textbook end of the turn primordial glyph. Sequinox, you get a slap on the wrist
Glyph
for that
last.
one. Chat, I unleash you. Go. Tell Sequinox what he did wrong there. But Frost Nova, it kind of allows him to potentially just save that Frostbolt and just use the Frost Nova. But going ahead and saying, I don't think you have Alexstrasza, and just putting that burn into the 6/5.
Yeah, Alexstrasza coming down wouldn't prevent lethal from Sequinox
Sure.
on board anyway. So, maybe it's...
It could be Lyra time.
What can Servant of Yogg-Saron do for you?
Not enough. I like what Lyra can potentially do for you. You could get something big off there. Obviously, a lot of the pre-spells are removal and healing. So
you wouldn't be able to play it this turn, though. And you need to block this turn.
Yeah, that's
so
true. You don't
it
have
would
any cheap
require you
spells.
to pick up a spell off the top and then chain a bunch. The best thing that Servant of Yogg-Saron can do for 5 or less, it can Frost Nova, it can put up another block, it can...
It can dig into Wild and get Tree of Life.
Ah, no, it can't.
Nope.
Because that's Wild and 9 mana. Yeah, this is looking like Sequinox. He's going to pop the block again this turn. He can clear the board or freeze it. End this game in 2 turns.
Realistically, Tom did what he felt he had to do there, which is sling the burn and just say, okay, don't have Alexstrasza. Alexstrasza came right off the top for Sequinox. So I definitely like Tom's line there. Had an opportunity earlier to not kill the 2/2 Pyros. Went ahead and did it, though, with the Volcanic Potion, I believe it was. If it was Volcanic Potion, ping the 2/3.
We get to see the pack opened anyway.
Sequinox is such a giver. Tyrannus.
Curious Glimmerroot. One of these things is actually useful. Do you Corrupting Mist for the BM?
I don't know. I mean, this matters a lot for Singapore, so...
Probably not.
I think you're just going to go ahead and not use the Corrupting Mist here.
Get a little punished by Alexstrasza if you play Corrupting Mist.
All right, well, Servant of Yogg-Saron needs to block there, I want to say. There's... obviously, Alexstrasza doesn't do anything. Cabal Courier could potentially be a block. Nope, just Savagery and...
Well, that's about as disappointing as it gets.
Ooh, the Servant of Yogg-Saron actually Savageried himself for 0 damage, so that was useless on all accounts. It just was targeting your own 1 minion there, and you obviously had way less minions than your opponent. It did no actual damage, so
Was the Savagery actually savage?
No.
Amnesiac's not here to tell us, but I would have to say no.
I like that. We just have to go to him now and like shoot him a text like, hey,
Is this savage?
Is this savage?
Read the situation. Give me your opinion.
No.
But ultimately, Singapore going to get on the board with their first win in the Mage Mirror. Here we can see it is going to be Sequinox coming up yet again. He's going to be playing Priest this time, Rob.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Malagos Taiwan on the Shaman. Now, last time we saw Sequinox, he was playing Singleton Priest, and it was a grand old time for everybody involved, except the opponent, which he did beat.
Yeah, Sequinox playing twice here because XNVX was unable to make it again. In the Hearthstone Global Games, these teams have to give us prior warning if there's a schedule conflict. There was in this case for XNVX. So Sequinox playing again, and I'm excited about that. I've enjoyed Sequinox play as a player. You know, we've seen a little bit of misplays. Well, nothing super huge. Like playing the Primordial Glyph at the end of the turn, there was a little bit of...
Some sequencing that could have been better, but ultimately didn't really matter.
I was talking about the Ysera play. From last week.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That
So
was hilarious.
A little bit of unsteady play, but I like what we've seen from him. He's been very creative.
That Ysera was insane.
Yep.
If you guys didn't see that one, go back and watch Singapore's last match on broadcast, where it was... He burned like 8 cards. Ysera lived forever and didn't take Greater Healing Potion, and somehow he still won. It was a magic trick, for sure.
All right, well, Sequinox taking on Malagos Taiwan. Malagos Taiwan, an extremely storied control player. That's what he does. I actually have never seen him not play control.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But then again, we thought that Pin Ping Ho always played Shaman, and that hasn't happened for 2 broadcasts. So I don't know what's going on anymore, but I would expect that Malagos here has bought some version of Control Shaman, so Spirit Echo Jades would be my initial thinking. And then, obviously, we have to assume that Sequinox has brought that Singleton Priest yet again because it did work for him last time, and it was a lot of fun to see something different, but it is very likely that he switched it up, as Priest has quite a few viable archetypes right now. You can bring just like combo Divine Spirit Inner Fire Priest, there's Control Priest variants that are quite good, and then Dragon Priest as well is still actually very strong. So a lot you can do with the Priest class, very similar to Mage and Paladin.
Well, if Malagos chooses to subscribe to what is current conventional wisdom, the Bloodlust Evolved Shaman certainly has become very popular in the last month or so. Obviously predicated on just going wide on the board, getting that early pressure going, and then using the Evolve or just leveraging it with the Doppelgangster and then the Bloodlust as well. So very curious to see if Malagos Taiwan is going to go for something that matches more his style, like you said, which termed the Concede Shaman or the Spirit Echo Shaman. I actually saw just recently a version of the Doppelgangster list that was actually running the Spirit Echo as well.
That could be really cool.
So you get Spirit Echo on the Doppelgangster. That is a lot of value.
It absolutely is. And you're running 2 copies of Evolve, so if you could potentially get down Doppelgangster 3 times, I don't know. I don't know what that would be like. I don't want to imagine that world because it would have a lot of 6 drops in it. But I, just like you said, from the type of player that Malagos is, I would expect this to be a more control-oriented shaman, but yes, conventional wisdom says that Bloodlust Shaman is more popular right now, so there is certainly a chance that he has brought that. Here we can see both these guys getting ready. No teammates in the room, but they are certainly communicating through some means of voice comms. Yeah, this is going to be Sequinox on this Reno Priest again. I'm happy we get to see it again because last time it kind of made no sense that it won, but...
That is an actual charged Devil Sword.
Don't you just free from Amber those guys? Don't you just want an 8-mana 7/7 that can hit face?
Last time I was telling you that I played a fair bit of Kazakus Priest in the last month and a half, and I could kind of be your guide on what was going on. But now that I see the charged Devil Sword, I'm just going to take a step back. I have no idea what's going on.
I'm letting Sequinox take the wheel because I just don't know, Rob. And it is going to be that Bloodlust Shaman type for Malagos, but we saw Thing from Below in hand.
Yeah, this is pretty clearly just the token Shaman type. We see all the hallmark cards of it. Stonehill Defender plays really well into Evolve. You generate more resources. It's very flexible in terms of what you can pick. Maybe you need a White Eyes. Maybe you need an Alakir. You got options.
Additional free Thing from Below. Get a lot of value from Thing from Below and Evolve. And maybe he throws in a Spirit Echo. I've seen crazier things, like Sequinox's Priest deck.
All right, so obviously Kazakus represents the ability to be pretty flexible in what you need to do in any given board state, and it's very powerful and certainly worth building around for certain decks. One thing you do give up with building around Kazakus is consistency. There's only ever going to be one Shadow Word Pain, one Dragonfire Potion, and these cards, this Potion of Madness is another one where they're kind of essential to just holding the board, and oftentimes when you play this deck, this style of Priest deck against the Bloodlust Shaman, what you really need early on is like a Wild Pyromancer with the coin, and then a Power Word Shield. Just clear off the 1/1 Murloc tokens. Tar Creeper, super powerful. Then you kind of go into your Holy Nova Dragonfire Potions turns, but it's really inconsistent. And with him having both Ysera and Charged Devilsaur, I'm honestly not entirely sure what this list is. Gonna go ahead and just use the Shadow Word Pain to tidy up the Mana Tide Totem. Obviously, you don't want your opponent drawing a bunch of cards with this style of deck.
I mean, I'm seeing a world here where Malagos goes all in on board this turn and just rips Bloodlust on 5 and wins. I do believe that Sequinox would Kazakus into a 1-mana spell and try to get 2 damage AoE and stop that blood flow. But there is a reality where Malagos just wins the game next turn.
I could totally see Sequinox going for the 5-mana potion and just saying, like,
I can see him being greedy.
I'm going to get a little more value. But if he does, he is absolutely in trouble.
I mean, they've said, like, you never outvalue the Crow, for instance. I don't know that you outvalue Sequinox.
All right, we do see he's gone ahead and made the reasonable adult decision to go for a 1-mana Kazakus potion.
But if he doesn't get the 2 damage AoE, he's still in a lot of trouble. He has no AoE to back this up if he doesn't hit it right here.
The 4 armor is certainly useful to 3 damage as well. Can clear off at least one of the minions. I think I value the
I value 3 damage.
I was going to say, I think I value the ability to just clear something here.
It's healing 4, essentially, if you're playing around Bloodlust. Oh, he's feeling the pain now, yeah.
Now Sequinox, because he didn't get what he was looking for, is wondering, well, do I play the potion or do I just accept that if I, don't get what I need here, I'm just going to be done anyway?
3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 plus 5. Yeah, so this would be exact lethal with Bloodlust if Sequinox doesn't use the potion here.
All right, there's the coin. He's going to be able to take out one of these minions.
Wait, he drew a card. Is he going to... Okay. So he's still putting himself just out of reach, but...
I mean, Jade Lightning there. Now you have the extra damage there.
Mm-hmm.
You have Jade Lightning and the Spirit or Jade Claws on the next turn, so even if he heals, you've got him.
What's that, Rob? Malagos is a control player?
Control the face.
I don't know.
Control the face. That's
Control
the first lesson they teach you.
Totals more than anything. Oh, man. Nova off the top. Let's go. Rip it.
Malagos is just drunk with power there. He's like, this is what people have been doing to me. Finally, I'm the aggro player.
Oh, goodness gracious, no. Sweet, sweet control players.
Malagos Taiwan is being led down a dark and wonderful path of hitting people in the face.
Damaging path.
Yeah.
Of ending the game on turn 6.
All right, so Wild Pyromancer into something cheap there could have made the difference, at least from what Sequinox can see. Obviously, we know that Sequinox is dead in every conceivable universe.
Wow.
Pew pew.
Get him.
In case you were curious what noise lasers make. All right,
There's
Sequinox,
no lasers on this map. We're not even on laser board.
Sequinox and his cheeky priest deck got a win last week. Not going to be the case here. Malagos Taiwan just says, well, you can play your 9 mana cards in the next life because you're donezo.
I want to know what that charged Elvisaur is about.
I really hope we get to interview him again. That's just going to be all my questions.
We know you lost with it, but Bud, what is going on there? What are you doing with that priest deck? It is different, and certainly there is a lot of value to different with these deck lists because they're not open. Your opponent doesn't know what to expect, and you could definitely catch them off guard with some surprising tech choices. It's just that Charged Devilsaur seems a bit out of the ordinary, even thinking from that perspective. But
well, I was going to say, how much value does a Charged Devilsaur have when you have 0 health? None. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the score thus far. Currently 1-1, so we are now at a best of 3. Sequinox was able to win one, unfortunately lost a second. Next up, it's going to be Aaron taking on AHQ Roger. Roger's going to be playing that Druid deck, whereas Aaron is going to be on the Paladin. I want to say that Singapore, from what we've seen thus far, has been pretty much sitting where a lot of the other teams have been sitting, which is just that mid-range style of Paladin with Primordial Drake, Curator, a Stampeding Kodo, possibly one copy of Spike Ridge Steed, and then the early Murloc package is really kind of what they have been leading on.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds, Paladin. You get the good early development, the good early Murloc aggression, and then you have the consistency of the strong mid-game with Kodo and Steed, and then the late game with Tyrion, Rad Light Lord, Tarim, exactly. So it's a Paladin that can do it all. And when you're going into a tournament where you don't know what type of deck your opponent has brought, you like to have your bases covered across all boards, and that's really what the Paladin thrives at doing. And then looking at the Druid, 2 very well-defined archetypes, Jade, which just punishes all control decks, and then Aggro, which just can end the game so incredibly quickly. So really, this one comes down to what's Roger's personal preference. Does he like aggro? Does he like control? Well, I personally think the aggressive variant is a little bit stronger right now than the Jade variant, but Jade can survive against even the most aggressive Pirate Warriors and Druids.
Speaking of Pirate Warrior, that is in fact what Aaron brought last time, and we saw him get very excited as he Pirate Warrior down his unfortunate foe. So Roger, normally somebody obviously representing the AHQ Esports Club, who is generally more synonymous with rogue play. He was certainly someone who has enjoyed Miracle Rogue, at least on his time at the Hearthstone Championship Tour. But, obviously flexing the ability, like so many other players, to play multiple different styles. He's not just defined by one type there. And, we saw Malagos Taiwan, traditionally a control player, saying like, well, I'm going to go ahead and just play the Shaman deck. Yeah. So, it's important when you are competing in Hearthstone to be able to navigate all of the different decks, or else you're going to have a problem if you have to, potentially play 2 of 9 different decks.
I mean, certainly we've seen in this tournament, teams thriving where they have specialists, sort of, that really do their best work on a certain 2 classes or just a couple different deck archetypes. But historically, the most successful players are ones that really have a mastery across the board of all different types of decks, of all the different classes. Certainly that takes a lot of time, but they're the ones that are the most well-rounded, I would have to say, instead of, just when Pin Ping Ho only played Shaman back in the days of Shaman when it wasn't very good. Now it's nice to see that he's branched out, but maybe he should have done it a little bit sooner. I don't know.
It's still one of my favorite stories that we are obviously still pretty young into the history of competitive Hearthstone, but we have already accumulated some great stories and great characters.
I think we're Hearthstone historians, Rob.
We're Hearthstorians.
We're Hearthstorians.
Yeah.
We're telling the story of the Hearth.
So, Pin Ping Ho, obviously, back in the day, as you pointed out, would always play Shaman even when it was a little bit down in the dumps. So, it is interesting to finally start to see him get to a point where he says, okay, I'm going to, switch it up a bit. But we see here it is going to be Jade Druid versus that mid-range Paladin we were talking about. At least from what we can see, there is a chance this is a more control-heavy version of Paladin. Primordial Drake, Stonehill Defender, and Consecration, certainly powerful tools. Depending on what Paladin deck this is, you might be okay to keep Stonehill Defender, but if you have the Murlocs, you're going to definitely go for them in the early game.
Those Murlocs are so incredibly valuable against Druid, which has limited interaction in the early game. They like to be ramping on the first 3 turns, and if you can really get down early aggression and punish that very heavily, then you do just have a chance to spiral the game out of control. So it does look like Aaron has brought a straight control build. Pyro, Doomsayer are very evident of there not being an early Murloc package in this deck.
That's interesting to me because we haven't seen a whole lot of the control Paladin. I mentioned Malagos Taiwan brought it against Vietnam. He was playing against Shani, and he had what was by far the greedier N'Zoth control Paladin list. Yeah. Wouldn't be surprised if we see N'Zoth in this as well. But this is certainly a matchup that favors the Jade Druid over time. Paladin has realistically 2 full board clears, and that's pretty much it. And then the Paladin just keeps, the Jade Druid just keeps rebuilding these giant Jade Golems. So not saying it's unwinnable for the Paladin, but this style of Paladin doesn't really get aggressive on the board. It just kind of plays things down to control the board and tries to basically bleed their opponents dry of resources. One potential point that's worth noting is if the Druid never gets the Nourish, if the Druid never gets the Gadgets and Auctioneer to draw a bunch of cards, then the Paladin can potentially make a move there, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle.
The big point of power for the Paladin is going to be if they can utilize a couple of hero powers when their opponent is ramping, get a couple of those smaller minions to stick, and then stick Sunkeeper Tarim on a very important turn. The Druid struggles with removing wide boards of mid-range minions, and even in this case, 3/3 minions are going to be tough for the Druid to deal with. So that's really the point of power spike, I think, for the Paladin deck here is going to be that Sunkeeper Tarim turn, if Aaron can find a wider board state on his side than on the Druid side.
Unfortunately for Aaron, though, you are seeing that Druid is ramping really quickly. We've seen 2 Jade Blossoms now, so certainly going ahead and getting to that high mana level already. If Nourish is in hand, that's kind of the worst case scenario there for Aaron. Ooh. And Stonehill Defender doing what everybody loves it doing is just offering you really, really great ton options.
This is kind of a tough decision because Sen'jin fills out your curve, but Tarim and Tyrion are obviously so much more valuable. Tyrion is less good the later the game goes because often the Druid runs weapon removal. Often once it gets to turn 8, turn 9, turn 10, the Druid minions are going to just be bigger than Tyrion, and they will have gained somewhere around the 8 to 16 armor range, and Ashbringer will be negligible. So is Sunkeeper Tarim just a more flexible resource here?
I like Tarim as a flexible resource, but if you pick it, you're basically committing to saying, like, I'm going to be behind and I need to deal with the board. It is really depressing, though, what you pointed out.
Not necessarily, though. It doesn't necessarily. Like, yes, it clears off large boards of Jades very well, but it's also just a damage tool. You can just push a heck of a lot of damage with Tarim. So it's good on the backswing, but it's also really good when you're ahead. Even better, I would argue.
I guess at this point, though, when you look at the board, is it really feasible for you to think that making 1/1s and they're going to stick?
Yeah, no. But maybe you use your first Tarim to clear a wide board of Jades in cooperation with, Equality or Pyro and something. It remains to be seen. You're going to need a lot of mana for it. It's going to be quite tough. probably over 2 turns it'll be some form of clear, but then maybe you get to stick your second Tarim. Because like you said, if the Druid fails to draw Nourish, draw gadgets in, they do run out of resources quite quickly.
I actually don't know that I would have mind. I think I actually would have in that situation, if it were me, I might have just picked Sen'jin and said,
it just
I'm
fills
just
out
pretty
the
much,
curve well.
Yeah.
It seemed ludicrous to go with vanilla 3/5 Taz Dingo over Tyrion and Tarim, but you need to really look at the value of just having a strong minion to play every turn. In this case, Doomsayer looks like it may have the ability to clear the board, so you go for that if you have even the slightest chance of making it stick. But swipe here, Feral Rage, Wrath. There's so many ways for this plan to be disrupted by Aaron, and then yes, he'll be playing on the back foot for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's basically for Roger a choice of whether or not he wants to invest the Feral Rage, but we are seeing he does. He values the board he has, realizes that this is actually a pretty difficult board for the Paladin to deal with unless it wants to go ahead and invest the premium removal resources. The more I think about this, though, your description of Tyrion just kind of like being really powerful but doesn't really matter against Jade Golems. It's like Tyrion went to Paladin school for like 70-some years. Like, he comes out, he's a legendary, the music plays, and then he's just in front of like an 8/8 Golem who like just graduated high school, and Golem's like, what?
He's so good, but there's a time and place for every Tyrion. Maybe you get to land one and it has some impact in this game, but the longer the game goes on, the less likely the second Tyrion is as good. Diminishing returns, Rob.
Back in Tyrion's day, Jade Golems would have never happened.
Jade Golems weren't alive then. Tyrion only had so many things to contend with. I mean, well, back in those days, you just didn't play Paladin, so I don't know. Tough call.
Well, we did see the secret come down with the Wicker Flame Burn Bristle, so Roger's going to go ahead and just do the due diligence and figure out exactly what this is. Doesn't want to risk playing a big minion that just gets repentanced. The healing is largely negligible for Aaron at this point. The secret, though, it's generating value. The redemption is obviously really good with minions with Divine Shield. So Burn Bristle comes right back, and Roger just says, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and keep on my agenda of just making Jade Golems. It's a very simple agenda. It's a simple but honest life.
Oh, it is a life that you need to be very, very afraid of, because even though Taiwan hasn't drawn Nourish, they haven't drawn gadgets in, they've had consistent Jade resources here that Aaron has really struggled to deal with. Now, if Aaron is able to pick up one copy of Equality, he can blow out a very large board from Roger, and then Roger may not have the resources to develop on the backswing.
This is the point where the Paladin can make something happen.
Yeah.
Because the Nourish and the gadgets in haven't come out yet. So Roger currently sitting on few cards, one of them being an Innervate, which really isn't relevant at all at this point until a potential gadgets in comes out. The moment where Innervate was going to shine in the early game has 100% passed. So Innervate is now more a later consideration. So Aaron is basically looking at, okay, how do I clear this board and then make a board that is wide enough to just be unremovable for the Druid?
So I'm seeing 2 options. Okay, I lied. There's 3 options. You can just go with Equality or with Pyro Consecration this turn, excuse me, and then you leave the 4/1, which trades into your Pyro. That clears board. Double Aldor could have done it, but I like the Tarim. It requires a hero power from Roger next turn, which may throw him off of like a Primordial Drake, for instance, and it will essentially clear up the board that you were dealt with. So this is the most efficient way to clean up that board of 3 minions.
Okay, choosing to go with Eye of Blackpot here. Another consideration, which I think is a worse play, but worth pointing out, could have just been trade the minions and then play the Primordial Drake. Just go ahead and get the 4/8 on the board. It's super difficult for the Paladin to at least clear. Yeah, Peacekeeper brings it down to a 1/8, but I definitely like this better. It's proactive. And then if an Equality Consecration is forced to come out, you just get a 6/6 Golem. So this is definitely the better of the 2 plays, but as you pointed out, there were a couple of options for Roger on that turn.
Especially since Peacekeeper Kodo wouldn't have been online yet for Singapore. I could see where Primordial Drake was an option that turn. You're likely not going to be facing down large boards of small statted minions, but I suppose there is a world where the value from Primordial Drake in the later game could be greater. Plus, Aaron has to kill this board, then kill what comes out from Aya, and that's a lot to ask of poor Liliadrin. She can only do so many things in one turn.
Well, Peacekeeper here can reduce the power of these 2 minions, but obviously once Blackpaw dies, a 6/6 comes out. So I think sticking that Peacekeeper on the 5/5 just makes more sense. You don't have to worry about it just getting traded in and becoming a bigger minion, essentially. But Aaron doesn't really have a way here with what amount of mana he has to actually just find a way to clear the board and then generate something big. So he's just giving the Druid more and more time, essentially.
So Drake can come down now, clean up the board. You also have the option of using Swipe, and then could lay down Tar Creeper plus a hero power afterwards.
Nah, I like the Drake here. Just go ahead and get your, get your damage in. You have the potential to make a 6/6 so should something happen to Blackpaw. You're just putting forth a very annoying board. Now, there's the Infested Tauren, which does tell us that this is, in fact, going to have N'Zoth in it.
That means that Aaron has a lot more value going into the late game than just the traditional Control Paladin, for instance, that we were seeing at Europe HCT Spring Prelims. That those Paladins just ended at Tyrion, Rag Light Lord, Primordial Drake. They didn't have ways to build large boards in the late game. But with Infested Taurens, likely a copy of Cairn Bloodhoof, and then Tyrion, this Paladin deck can go the distance. That does provide an additional argument for picking the Tyrion over the Tarim previously, but not having had Tarim in hand, despite other than the Tarim that you got off of the Stonehill, means that I think that that was still better.
All right, well, speaking of wide boards, Taiwan's going to go ahead and make one of their own. And at this point, it is very susceptible to Equality Consecration or Equality Wild Pyromancer. So it is something they have to be aware of. And the reload from Roger is essentially moot. It is not a factor.
Pyro Equality, you can put down Infested Tauren alongside it. Things are looking quite good for Aaron now, but if Roger is able to pick up a copy of Nourish or Gadgets and Auctioneer...
It's this awkward mid-game point for the Jade Druid against control decks where a lot of times they don't hit the ability to draw more cards, and that's really what makes a deck so powerful, is just chain drawing cards, get a turn where you can pretty much go infinite with Gadgets and make the giant Jade Golems, set things up. Now Aaron looks like choosing not to go ahead and clear the board just yet, which, to your point, could have gone ahead and just full cleared the board and then played down the Infested Tauren just to have something going, but probably realizing, hey, that's still not enough pressure to do anything sizable with. But when are you waiting to pull the trigger on just clearing this Druid board?
I mean, that's a tough... It's tough, but certainly the Jade Golems are only going to get bigger from here. If Roger did have something like Gadgets and Jade Idol in hand, or a second copy of Jade Behemoth, you need some way to clear that board, and Infested Tauren isn't going to do it. So at least in this case, you challenge the board well enough with Peacekeeper Kodo, and then you still have Pyro Equality to clean up after that. And if you pick up second Equality, then suddenly you have 2 full board clears. So I think that this was ensuring that you kill 2 boards instead of 1, which is just better.
All right, Sunwalker, obviously with the Divine Shield, certainly tough for the Druid to get through. The Ancient of Blossoms wouldn't have been terrible either. 3/8, just again, it's just a big body. Wide base for the Druid to try to get through, certainly difficult. But goes ahead and goes with Sunwalker there. Really would have liked to have seen Tyrion at that point. Like, yeah, you can't play it on this turn, but again, for the reasons you brought up, and with the Druid very clearly struggling on resources, Tyrion would have been tremendous. But upside of Sunwalker, you actually get to play it this turn, and you are presenting something reasonably strong, but there's that Nourish, and this could spell the beginning of the end for Aaron, depending on what he gets here. Okay, nothing you can't recover from.
Yeah. Not the most influential set of cards. You would have liked, I think, a little bit more development here, but at least you do find ways to deal with the board.
Yeah, Gadgeton would have been really the premium draw there. You have the Innervate, you have cheap spells that came with that Nourish. If you just managed to get, say, a Gadgetzan in place of the Earthen Scales or Feral Rage, would have felt pretty good about that. But has a 7/7 on the board now, and there's the natural copy of Tarim for Aaron.
Well, now Aaron is looking at pretty much 2 guaranteed board clears here.
Yeah.
Tarim with anything on your side will allow you to clear Roger's board and leave you with a 3/7 and potentially additional 3/3s on the board, depending on how much development you have in place.
Could just play the hero power, go ahead and just get the extra 3/3.
You could even hero power Pyromancer and tear him this turn. You clear, and then you are left with 3/7 and 2 3/3s.
I love watching Roger, by the way. Like, he just gets so into it. And last time we saw him, he was playing Pyro Warrior, and he just slamming axe into the face. And
he just gets such genuine joy out of, one, playing Hearthstone, and two, hurting his opponents. So maybe you're a little bit worried about one of those things, but the other one is good.
Okay, so forgoing the Sunkeeper Tarim this turn, gonna go ahead and just put in the Stonehill Defender, leave the 7/7 up, and just try to get even more value. So Aaron's play this entire game has just frankly been incredibly patient, just waiting for what he feels is that right time. And Primordial Drake coming down here is pretty big.
You say his play has been incredibly patient. I think that turn might have been a bit rushed. So Roger did have the option there to Primordial Drake plus hero power down the Tauren and then hit face for 7, putting Aaron down to a very low life total that he potentially could have finished the game up next turn with Feral Rage plus Earthen Scales hero power. So I think I would have liked to see Roger think about that one a little bit longer. He's still representing potential lethal here with minions on board, but it's very likely that Aaron has some equality combo to clear off these minions, and now you don't have potential lethal represented. So just a thought.
It's certainly rough now because he's in that weird spot where Aaron has to start looking at basically chaining together multiple things on that turn. And yeah.
If you could have put Aaron down to 8. Your board will likely get checked either way. You would have had to draw another swipe or Feral Rage off the top, and there would have to have not been a taunt represented. But it was definitely worth looking at. So second copy of Tarim comes down now.
Does this Jade Idol have to be shuffled? This is one of those. I honestly think this is such a skill testing decision how you use Jade Idols.
Yeah, you still have not seen a quality Consecration or a quality Pyro coming from Roger yet.
If you just play this Jade Idol as is for an 8/8, a 1-mana 8/8, yes, it's extremely powerful because it's a 1-mana 8/8, but you are essentially saying, I am giving up the ability.
I'm giving up a 1-mana 9/9. I'm giving up a 1-mana 10/10. Is it worth it? Can you finish the game next turn with this Jade Idol, or do you need to play long? Because now, Aaron only has 3 cards in hand. You've seen a lot of the very high-value cards in his deck.
Right. Are you married to this 1-mana 8/8, or do you maybe want to see other golems down the line?
Yeah, I mean, are you still trying to play the golem field a little bit, get out there, take a golem to the movies? I mean, golem dancing.
I like a life just where you get to meet a whole bunch of different other golems
Maybe you go Dutch with a golem down the road.
Sure. All right, well, we see now the ability to play Tyrion and then have a clear board with the trait, so this is probably just as good as it gets, and from this point on, at least from what we can see in Aaron's hand, his board is just essentially just reactive. It's just there to... Tyrion needs to hit a bunch of times, and then you just win the game.
Well, or you just draw N'Zoth. So Tyrion dies, you pick up N'Zoth, you get Tauren and second Tyrion, and then...
You have to draw the N'Zoth first.
You do. There's the kicker.
You
just
can't
like
play N'Zoth
you want to play the field
him.
of Jade Idols, but you need to get the Jade Idols to want to be played first.
Yeah. All right, chooses to go ahead and...
Best of both worlds, Rob. You get to settle down and see others.
Wow. This metaphor has actually gone way farther than I ever had meant for it to, so... If my girlfriend's out there watching, this is not representative of any of my thoughts. We're just talking about Jade Golems.
How does the 8/8 Jade Golem feel about this one? I don't know. Fandrel's a bit of an instigator here. Don't know if we want to copy all of Fandrel's life choices, but...
All right, well, Fandrel's gonna go ahead and say one out both. He gets that 8/8, as you said.
Portano Lastos.
Shuffles in the extra copies of Jade Idol. And going to be able to at least pop the Divine Shield there, but won't be able to clear the Tyrion.
You've seen Roger holding on to these two cards for quite a while now. If Aaron's been paying attention and the rest of Singapore as well, I think you can get one of those cards definitively down to being Innervate, because there's pretty much nothing in Roger's deck that he wouldn't have played other than Innervate up until this point because it was simply useless. And then it's likely to think that the other card could be some form of tech card. So, you know, maybe a Hungry Crab if you're looking up against Paladins, maybe Harrison Jones, or possibly Gluttonous Ooze.
Yeah, solid read there. There really isn't, you know, on the flip side for Aaron, you can probably guess a quality. But then you could also say that maybe you expect N'Zoth is in there because you've only seen one minion down. So Roger there not really making a turn that he wanted to. He just kind of said, well, this is what I have to do in the situation I'm in. Knows that he can at least break the Ashbringer with you, so can't just play that out. All right, it looks like Equality just going to go ahead and come down here. Consecration as well, so gets to keep the minions. You've seen both swipes. Feeling pretty good about the 3-1 surviving, which is actually, I think, a pretty big deal here just in terms of pushing damage. And
not to mention, yeah, you're pushing 12.
Yeah.
So
all right. Roger has seen one Nourish, no Gadget Zans, and okay, there's the Gadget Zan.
One Gadget Zan changes so many things. You need to pick up good resources off the Innervate still.
It's got to be big.
Jade Idols all day. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It's still very much like a swipe here. Okay, things got difficult now. Well, hero power down the Tyrion, Gluttonous Ooze, you go back up 5 armor.
Yep.
Take down the Ashbringer. And suddenly you have a very wide board presence. You've seen one Equality combo.
Okay, this is it. Equality Consecration, go, keep pushing damage.
And if Aaron can pick up N'Zoth, it will be all over.
Even if you Forbidden Healing yourself, just full 20, you can make a hero power and then just Forbidden Healing yourself back up to 30. You still never get this board back.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, okay, we're just going. That last card in the deck is not a big deal.
The Druid can do a lot of things. Vast amounts of burn damage is not one of them, especially when you've already seen a copy of Earth and Scales and both copies of Feral Rage.
And now it's up to the dudes.
Can the dudes get the job done?
Come on, dudes.
You don't need Quartermaster. 1 damage goes a long way.
All right, so we're wrathing the 3-1, drawing a card, can still play the Jade Behemoth, can use the hero power as well to tidy up another one of those 1-1s. And this is what I'm talking about. This matchup is so... Yeah, the Druid can just like absolutely draw what it needs to draw, and then it just goes off. But if the Druid kind of has the clunky mid-game draws, the Paladin definitely makes it interesting. But at this point, with both equalities gone, like this is frankly just lights out.
Well, but here's the thing. Yeah, Taiwan now has represented lethal next turn if Aaron does not find some form of taunt or heal. Why Pyro off the top is an absolute whiff. So this honestly probably needed to be the N'Zoth turn.
I think it pretty much had to be N'Zoth, or...
You can still maybe pull it off next turn and be safe, but despite the fact that Aaron was able to put on so much pressure and was able to clear 4 total boards with 2 Terrams, 2 Equality Consecrations, it still doesn't look like it's going to be enough. It's so difficult to out-control Jade Druid.
I feel like Roger, every time I see him get really animated, it just looks like he's listening to like a Wu-Tang Clan album. Like he's getting really,
it's going hard.
Really aggressive.
All right, chooses to shuffle the last copy of Jade Idol in the deck.
Yeah, and you can do your due diligence to just clear the board to make sure something weird doesn't happen again. You don't know the deck list, but you have seen both equalities, so...
You've seen both Stonehills, both equalities. Rallying Blade is not going to cut it. That is going to be a win for Roger in game number 3 of the series. So Taiwan going to go up 2-1 over Singapore. As soon as the Druid was able to get its draw engine going, that game finished up very quickly. It was just those awkward mid-turns where all that the Druid had in hand was Innervate, Gluttonous Ooze, and then whatever it was drawing off the top. And had Singapore had N'Zoth earlier, then they would have likely just been able to put on enough pressure to close out the game, but that was not the case, as is often what happens when you're relying on one card to be the majority of your late game plan.
Both decks kind of have a finality clause where they're saying, I'm going to get to the end of this deck and just go ahead and win. For the Paladin, though, the finality clause requires a little more setup and a little more time to get to, whereas if the Druid just gets that explosive draw with a Nourish into a Gadget and start chaining together a bunch of spells, then the Druid doesn't necessarily have to meet as many quest requirements realistically to kind of fulfill the agenda. We see now Taiwan up 2-1, and again, they want to get this win. They want to go up to 3-1, be tied with Mexico in the group. They don't want to have to go down to 2-2. Singapore, though, really wants it the other way. They want to go up to 2-2. They want to drag Taiwan back to them. Yeah.
Tell me why.
I'm not playing your game. I was an NSYNC guy. I'm not playing Backstreet Boys stuff. Sorry. Maybe a little 98 degrees.
Bye, Robert Wing.
Well, we still have to cast the last 2 games.
That's true. We're not getting out of here quite yet because it's going to be Singapore on the Shaman up against Pin Ping Ho playing Rogue. Crazier things have happened, I suppose. I do actually recall him. Did he play Rogue in his previous match that we had seen him in? He did not play Shaman.
He played Druid.
He played Druid? He played Druid.
He played
All
Aggro Druid, and he went on like turn 4.
We have definitive proof that Pin Ping Ho can play at least 3 classes.
Well, Pin Ping Ho is obviously, as a Hearthstone World Championship veteran, certainly plays
Can play
a number of
probably
classes.
at least all 8, and then sometimes Warlock. It's like A-E-I-O-U, sometimes Y.
Sure.
Vowels. Sometimes Warlock is a class.
Yeah, it's fun for us as fans and spectators of Hearthstone Esports to have those people that are associated with certain classes. Back in the day it was Amaz and Priest.
Yeah.
You see players like VLPS, Naviute with Warrior. You like to have those players that you can associate with certain classes, but obviously in order to just compete in HCT, you generally have to have at least 4 decks you can play.
We meme about it, but these guys are all Hearthstone experts. They've played thousands of games, thousands of hours of every class imaginable. Yes, even Warlock. And though Pin Ping Ho has played more Shaman in the spotlight over the last few years, getting to see him branch out a little bit now it's quite a treat as well.
You say even Warlock. Like, up until this point, Warlock had just pretty much dominated forever. So Warlock's only really recently gone off to...
He needed a little bit of he wanted a vacation. He's like, guys, give me like 6 months, come out with a new expansion, I'll be back, I'll be great.
Yeah.
But I need some time off.
But now he's off making commercials and, doing pretty well.
Uther, he's been busy.
Yeah, just all over the place. But we do see it is going to be Quest Rogue for Pin Ping Ho, and then crumpled on the Shaman there. We saw the Shaman earlier. Again, it's that Primal Fin Totem, token generating, Bloodlust having, Doppelgangster evolving, good time Shaman. All right, now Taiwan.
It just does so many things.
Taiwan on the mulligan there. Didn't necessarily get anything that's super intuitive. The Novice Engineer can help you cycle to resources, but you'd certainly feel better beginning the game with, say, Novice Engineer and then Shadow Step. That certainly feels like something you'd kind of prefer to have in that opening because it allows you to at least... what is Pin Ping Ho laughing about?
He's just always so happy.
That whole team, man. Team Taiwan is animated. I just want to hang out in their voice chat.
Yeah, both of these teams. Singapore has Sequinox doing crazy things with Priest, and then you have Pin Ping Ho laughing at seemingly nothing, but probably something that, maybe Tom made a funny joke. Who knows?
Well, what I do know...
To imagine the life of the Taiwan bunch.
What I do know here is that Singapore playing this Shaman deck can certainly do bad things to a Quest Rogue. It obviously just goes very wide on the board, has tools like Flame Tongue Totem, has Bloodlust, can absolutely push pressure, and realistically the only thing that the Rogue can realistically do is vanish. That is kind of their, okay, let's reset the game, I don't really want to deal with all these things, and there's not a whole lot of charge minions, there's essentially just patches for this Shaman deck, but yeah, once the minions get on the board, it's going to be very difficult for Pin Ping Ho to both clear them and actually proceed along his quest. We do see, however, a Youthful Brewmaster come into hand for Pin Ping Ho, so he does have the ability to bounce the Engineer with the Brewmaster, but it takes time. That's 4 mana, and that is realistically a lot of time to give this style of Shaman. Even though, in Taiwan's favor, we do see both Bloodlust being drawn for Crumpled there, which is not always ideal. Not this early in the game, anyway.
No, you would like more development, and usually one copy of Bloodlust is going to get the job done against Quest Rogue because they have no defensive tactics, like you said, other than Vanish, which, if Pin Ping Ho can have the quest completed, prep Vanish, and then put a lot of power on the board as a follow-up, then yes, he will be in a very favorable position at that point. But that's a lot of, step 1, play 4 minions of the same name. Step 2, play quest. Step 3, play Vanish when your opponent has a big board but hasn't killed you yet, and then develop. It's a lot of things to accomplish before you get to that favorable position.
Yeah, comparably, Crumpled's list is minions. Minions that make minions.
And then
minions
Bloodlust.
Hit them very hard.
Yes. Hit him in the face. Deal damage. Deal 30 damage. Win game.
I think that's a quest we can all enjoy.
It's a quest that's easy enough to accomplish.
Right,
you don't even need Big Fin.
Flame Tongue Totem could just come down here with the Bloodsail Corsair, line it up to make sure Patches also gets the plus Flame Tongue attack buff. and just kind of go. But the Igneous Elemental, you're not really looking to interact with it because you don't want to give the Flame Elementals to Taiwan, so you're just going to kind of work around it and just keep pushing damage. And even if it just ends up like eating small minions, it's really not that big of a deal to you because you're just the one pushing pressure. And so long as your board stays at least like a little bit thick, you can just go ahead and use the Bloodlust on successive turns.
Even if this Igneous kills a couple of your totems, you're still developing more every turn than it is killing. Crumple's just going to go ahead and give Pin Ping Ho the Flame Elementals.
Sure. Actually says that he just values basically not having his board checked frequently. And, if you're playing Flame Elementals, you're spending your mana doing that as opposed to, maybe making the dagger as opposed to bouncing Glacial Shard. So maybe he just makes the read, that's not so bad. And he's saying, I'm going to kill him on basically turn 5 or 6.
So regardless of how many resources Pin Ping Ho has, he still will not have time to complete that quest. That's the position that Crumpled is putting him in.
I mean, the only consideration here that I guess feels weird is, okay, if Prep Vanish were to come down, then you are essentially saying I'm going to give them I'm giving him the Flame Elementals. It also it not only disrupts my board, but I'm giving him the Flame Elementals to just automatically complete the quest. Yeah. So that is a consideration point, but I brought it up before. He just says, I don't want my board being checked, and that's what the Igneous Elemental would have done.
So Pin Ping Ho is still going to need one other bounce effect or copy of Firefly, for instance, to get that 4th Flame Elemental. Still a bit of a ways off from actually completing the quest. Crumpled has the option of Hero Power Thing from below or Hero Power Jade Claws this turn. Either way, setting up for just finishing the game next turn with Bloodlust.
Yeah, I like the more power option here. Just basically say, I win next turn off Bloodlust if you don't deal with the board.
Which Pin Ping Ho cannot. So what's the most that he can do? You can Novice Engineer and potentially draw into nothing.
I guess one consideration, I'm still thinking back on that Igneous Elemental, is had it lived with the dagger, it could have dealt with the Flame Tongue Totem, and you're saying, okay, I just want to
You could have
the
lost
Flame
quite
Tongue
a bit of power.
Yeah, so conventional wisdom tells you that generally you don't want to deal with Igneous Elemental, but it's important to be able to look at your unique situation and say, mathematically speaking, what actually represents more power on the turns I'm looking to win the game.
Sacrifice 3 damage, but gain, winning the game 1 turn sooner. And you know that Pin Ping Ho can't complete the quest and play the quest and build up a board fast enough for him to be able to win the game.
All right, Pin Ping Ho just going to go ahead and look to complete the quest here and say, well, maybe he doesn't have Bloodlust.
That is definitely possible. It's only 2 cards in Crumpled's deck.
And if you're wondering, okay, well, I heard some people saying that this Shaman deck wasn't necessarily super consistent or powerful. There are matchups where it absolutely shines. Like there are matchups where this deck has problems and it doesn't perform. This is not one of them.
No.
And, you're just like, well, I'm going to put things on the board. It's going to get checked, and that's just going to be a game.
Yeah, this is one of the best possible matchups for the Shaman because the Rogue has no defensive tactics and no way to block the flow of damage. Occasionally they're running Tar Creeper, Tolvir, Stone Shaper, but we did not see that, nor did we see Prep Vanish for Pin Ping Ho. So Singapore going to tie up the series now 2-2. And if Singapore were to win this, then their match score would be tied up with Taiwan's at 2-2. So this whole group, very middling right now. Like 4 teams potentially could come out 2-2 after today. And this is, yet again, a close series in a close bracket.
And I think more importantly than any of that, Pin Ping Ho lost to Shaman.
Ooh, that just crushes your confidence. That feels bad. Well, fortunately, it's going to be Tom taking that ace spot for Taiwan on the Paladin, and Crumpled is going to be coming back for a repeat performance with his Druid deck.
Well, Tom had the option there to go ahead and play Warlock, but just says, you know what?
Probably not going to do that.
I like to just go ahead and win. So he's just going to go ahead and do that. So Paladin versus Druid, we've obviously seen a fair bit of both tonight. Druid has the 2 main modes, whereas Paladin has kind of one mode that
and
has...
then like mode light.
Right. It's like it basically like some specs more into early game power, more into late game power. So Paladin certainly the more flexible of the two in terms of what it can do, but at this point, I don't know. It's just hard to say. It's hard to guess.
This is a tough one.
I was trying to think back.
For instance, Tom is on a Control Paladin build and Crumpled is on a Jade Druid, then the Druid we already saw win that matchup. So that's definitely potential. If it's a more mid-range Paladin, which I think is the most popular variant right now with Murlocs, and Singapore has a Jade Druid, then maybe the Paladin has enough early game. If it's a very aggressive Paladin and it's a Jade Druid, then the early game certainly will be there. But if it's an aggro Druid, everything changes. So
right. And the point I was going to make is that we've seen Malagos Taiwan, obviously in Taiwan, bringing the Control Paladin, but Tom's a control player as well. But it's hard to say, right? Because you, as has been pointed out before, there is value to just kind of swerving on your opponent and saying like, well, you expect this, so I'm going to bring this.
They look left, you go right.
Yeah. Okay, so we do know at least it'll be Jade Druid. And then
it will be probably a more mid-range Murloc Paladin build.
Right. So
yeah.
That is not the opening you want to see for Tom. Tom really was looking for the kind of wide Murloc board early to just blow the Druid out.
That's an ugly start, but that's a great start for Crumpled if he's able to find some early Jade minions for follow-up from this. Wow.
Hey, you want Jade? I got Jade.
You want ramp? I got ramp. You want early removal if your opponent's got Rockpool Hunters? We got that too.
Yeah, World Leader just kind of rolls up into Tom's hands like, hey, we're the boys.
Where are my ones and twos at? You know, I'm here to be supportive. I'm here to buff.
Well, going to, unfortunately, have nothing to buff, at least for the moment. There's Finja. So Finja, okay. Generally, Finja is extremely powerful in situations where your deck is running War Leader and Bluegill, and that's it. But most of these Murloc decks lately have been running some of the earlier minions, Inquisitor. We occasionally see some of the smaller stuff, but that certainly weakens the overall power of Finja. That said, if you can get some like semi-decent Murlocs out the Finja against a Druid, because a Druid doesn't have much in terms of area of effect removal, it's still a pretty big win.
Yeah, any board presence that you can get out for free and then buff up with War Leaders is going to be fantastic against Druid that has a very difficult time with dealing with wide board states of mid-range minions. I'm eyeing Stampede and Kodo, and I'm thinking that if that comes down on a Finja, Tom will have all of his dreams crushed. That's a very interesting tech choice for Singapore.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any way you make the read that Finja's in here. Finja has kind of mostly fallen out of the standard version of this deck. So instead, I like the Kodo here. Just put something big on the board. Yeah, you play into the True Silver, but you make him have it. And then that's something else he isn't necessarily developing into. So hits the 1-3-2, which is obviously the target you do want to hit. Yeah, I like playing the Kodo there. I would never just sit around for the maybe the Finja is there and then maybe the board's in a situation where you think you're going to hit it, because so often against Paladin at this stage of the game, there's just 1 to 2 additional minions that have 1 or 2 attack.
It would be very hard to limit the board down to just Finja, and that it's almost impossible to guarantee that Tom even has it in hand right now. So yes, it would have been very greedy. It would have been very risky. And obviously with Caster Vision, we can tell that it may have paid off. But just to develop the body here for Crumpled is likely going to be good enough. It'll challenge War Leader if that were to come down for Tom this turn. Challenge the Tidecaller. So Tom needing to make some decisions about how does he want this to play out. Could have elected to save War Leader for after Finja, but going to choose to just try to kill off this Kodo as quickly as possible.
And realizing, that he was basically only going to get that much value out of the hero-powered Murlocs with the War Leader. So once the War Leader went away, then that was just a 1-1 again. Just decides to go ahead and get maximum value, beat up the Kodo a little bit there, and make the Kodo die on trade.
Kodo still getting light 3 for 1. Wow.
We were talking in the last game, kind of Paladin versus Jade Druid, how Jade Druid in that game got really awkward mid-game draws, and really the early game was also kind of poor.
Yeah.
This is an example of when things go right for Druid.
The stars have aligned for Malfurion in this case. Crumpled got the Nourish exactly when he needed it, picked up additional card generation, additional removal. He had the ramp early on.
I don't think you trade the Tidecaller here.
Oh, no.
No,
point.
You want something. I mean, yeah, the 2-2 Jade Golem is probably going into the Tidecaller, but you're essentially trying to make it really awkward for Singapore to play something down. Because if they do, then you have the War Leader. Well, not sorry, you've already used the War Leader, but there's still a reasonable chance that with something, a quality, for example, you can trade the Finja into it and get the Murloc. So that said, for the reasons I brought up earlier, the Finja is a little bit less intimidating. You've seen one War Leader, and you've seen that the rest of the standard Murloc package appears to be there.
If you net 2 rock pools from this, yeah, it's good, but it's not to the power level of if you were just playing the Finja 5.
And meanwhile, Singapore about to go off, draw a bunch of cards. Tom making the appropriate face here, just of, why is this happening to me? I've been good. I do charity work on the weekends. I always buy my mom a card on her birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes it still happens to good people.
Bad things happen to good people. Jade Druid gets the nuts against good Uthers.
You put your faith in the light, you know, you do quests out there, you're helping the needy. Doesn't go your way.
Still not enough sometimes.
Crumpled not really drawing into too many things that he can leverage on this turn because realistically he'd already had them. He drew into he had the Innervates, he had 1 copy of Earthen Scales, could have chosen to use the Wrath, instead just goes ahead, uses double Earthen Scales on the Gadget Stand, basically says if you want to kill it, you're probably going to have to commit, you have at least a swipe, possibly an equality. Or not, sorry, not a swipe, he's the Paladin, but probably
True
just
silver.
an equality there, or a True Silver.
The Paladin swipe.
The old classic turn 6 Paladin swipe. All right, so the equality going to come out. This is still a win. It's a big resource, and we'll see exactly what comes off here, but Hydrologist War Leader is certainly not the end of the world. Yeah, this board is big, but with a single swipe of that War Leader or even a Wrath, this board is suddenly much tamer.
And that's the second War Leader. So the ability to buff Murlocs is now down to Gentle Megasaur for Tom, which he can pick up off of the Curator. So Tom still has significant resources left, which he can access over the next 2 turns, but he's losing his large board state now, and it's going to be difficult for him to get access to those resources and build up that big board state again at the same time.
All right, so this could be a full clear on the Murlocs, and then you don't have to worry about a Megasaur turn.
It's dangerous. Megasaur can come out, give these little guys poisonous, and then everything that you develop this turn is dead anyway, so you might as well just clear.
I just like playing the honest turn here. Just go ahead and swipe Hero Power. Yeah, you have the Behemoth, but if the +3 attack comes out, if the poisonous comes out, I mean, even with Aya here, I mean, Aya
+3
mitigates some of
attack
this.
is still full clear.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you're at least making him expend a lot of resources. So you're basically saying, okay, you get the buffs on your minions.
Yeah.
But it's a situation where I don't necessarily have to worry about you doing too much with it. Instead, Curator just going to come out and can at least get rid of the 3/3 Jade Golem if he wants to. Probably just going to leave the Aya alone, unless he chooses to just go ahead and make the 4/4 off the Aya body.
I mean, next turn Aya goes into Curator. You're hoping a Hero Power goes in as well.
That's why I don't think.
And then the
deal with
Golem
it, yeah.
can trade into the Vilefin pretty cleanly. Forces you to trade Hydrologist anyway, so maybe you just hit face. But if you do trade into Aya, then the 4/4 plus Hero Power can't automatically just go into Curator, so you're forcing an additional resource, but then you're losing board state, which you may have for Gentle Megasaur on the next turn. Aya Clear protects Curator more often, so I think this is correct. And 4/6 body is no slouch. Might as well try to keep it there as long as possible.
Sure. Yeah, and basically getting all the minions on board, even if it's just 2 traded into them, is certainly nothing to slouch out there.
Still Aya pulling quite a few resources from Tom, demanding 2 Murloc trades, Curator for 1 card. That's quite good.
Now we're starting to get into those heavy Jades. Now, one wrinkle about this deck that I think is interesting is it doesn't always run double equality.
Yeah, that's
there
true.
are situations where we just see the 1 equality, and if the 1 equality is already gone, and that's it, this is just like kind of an unwinnable position for the Paladin.
If Tom does has that 2nd equality, he would like to find it right now. I like to think that there's 2 copies in this deck. You have 2 Consecrations, 2 Primordial Drakes. Equality works so well with both of those. So even though you don't have Wild Pyromancer, Primordial Drake is sort of... It's getting the job done in the late game with the equalities regardless. It's just really a shame that Tom didn't have the early game pressure that he needed, that this deck really thrives on having. Because Crumpled did take the first several turns to ramp. Had Tom had that early pressure and the early Murloc synergy, he could have blown out this game while Crumpled was still, improving his mana pool and didn't have resources to develop.
Choosing Redemption up there, I think Repentance was certainly a discussion that could have been had at this point in the game, but it's also possible that you just see the Jade Spirit come out and then suddenly the Repentance is pretty bad. The only real scenario where it's going to be really good was something like Primordial Drake, but this isn't really a Primordial Drake situation anyway. You're not necessarily adding a lot to the board in terms of power. So Redemption there just gives you essentially another go at getting a good Hydrologist. Well, no, sorry, that's a getaway code. So you actually are just keeping a board presence.
Yeah. Drake or second Gadgetzin, the Repentance would have been quite good against. But in this case, if you can Redemption, get a Murloc to stick, you have a bigger board for Gentle Megasaur. Maybe you do hit +3 attack or Poisonous and are able to then clear off Singapore's board. And from there, you have quite a bit of development, but you need to get to that point first.
And I mean, even if the Gadgetzin hit the Repentance at that point, I mean, you're probably just getting what you need off the Gadgetzin on that turn. You're probably just playing into the spells then and then just pretty much calling it a day. Second Consecration could clear up 2 of the minions.
This really needed to be a quality off the top for Tom. Crumpled has expended the majority of the resources in his hand that we can see. This is a rather wide board state. And this is probably the best opportunity that Tom was going to get to clear board as well as develop on the backswing. So, I mean, this is really what you sacrifice by playing that equality so early to get rid of Gadgetzin. Of course, Tom was sort of between a rock and a hard place. He had to expend that equality to deny more resource generation for Crumpled, but it's unfortunate.
Well, there's the double Consecration. Go ahead and play the Redemption just to queue up the Tyrion you're getting off the top of your deck.
Well, you do get to full clear the rest of the minions on board with the Primordial Drake, so it's a 2-turn clear, and it's very expensive, but it will likely get the job done. Okay, so Gadgetzin off the top, you can immediately draw 3 with Wild Growth and Empty Mana. You can go from there. You just saw both Consecrations, so Equality Primordial Drake is the only wide board threat next turn, and you would have just seen Equality had it been in Tom's hand instead of both copies of Consecration.
I think I like just playing the Wild Growth and just holding the spell and then looking to play the Auctioneer on a future turn.
But I guess you still don't want to expend too much into Equality just in case Tom's trying to bait.
Yeah, I don't think you play Gadgetzin on that turn, realistically, but I do think playing the Wild Growth there and just getting the 0 mana cycle spell to play with the Gadgetzin on a future turn.
Maybe then you can Gadgetzin Empty Mana and combine more with it on that turn. 4 mana certainly is a lot more flexible than 2.
I mean, it's one of those situations where maybe you're just sandbagging that Wild Growth to make him think it's something else.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of mind gaming element.
I don't know. It still just feels like Crumpled has an abundance of options because he's had initiative this entire game.
All right, so 7-5 into the 4-8, and just go ahead and use the hero power to face check that, see its redemption, play the Primordial Drake down.
You end up with just a 4-8 taunt against nothing from your opponent. That does give Tom an opportunity to tear him and develop this next turn if that is what Crumpled goes with. So this could potentially be the swing that Tom was looking for.
Yeah, the 2-turn board clear was, as you said, kind of time-consuming and expensive, but it has put him in a decent spot right now. And Singapore, despite having options in hand, they're all kind of clunky options. The Fandrel's really doing pretty much nothing. It's just a 4-mana 3/5. The Primordial Drake here is going to go ahead and, yeah, come down. Just brings back with Redemption the 1/1. So it can just use the hero power, take 3 less damage.
Yeah. Good sequencing for Crumpled here.
Made sure that if it was getaway Kodo, he was just going to get the 1-1 back.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Ragnaros Light Lord.
That's just a solid choice.
That's big.
Challenges the Drake, heals you for 8. You get to hero power alongside.
What are the Jades at? I think the Jades were only at...
They're at 8-8 now.
Okay.
Last one was a 7-7. So sizable Jades, but Crumpled still needs to be able to string several of them together.
Just be time to go ahead and have that auctioneer turn. He doesn't need too much to really start pushing this back in his favor. Jade Idol was just the draw you wanted. You'd already had both Earthen Scales. All right, so Ragnar is going to live to fight another day. It really wasn't a universe where he died on that turn because, you know, as you pointed out earlier, Mulch is gone.
Ooh, Aldor Peacekeeper Kodos. You have a targeted kill on any of these things. 8-8 obviously represents more damage, but the Gadgetzin represents additional draw value for Crumpled. But looking at both of these players' decks, they're getting quite thin.
The problem for that for Taiwan is that when a Druid deck gets thin, assuming it doesn't waste the...
Both copies of Jade Idol. It will never fatigue.
Yeah, you're just dealing with progressively larger minions, so that's not really a win condition. I know there are times when I'm playing against Jade Druid, I'm like, yes, they've
got 3 cards. Oh
like,
no, they take 1 damage of fatigue, and now they are immune. Well, and now Crumpled just has Jades on Jades on Jades.
Yeah, I just played Jade Behemoth, played Jade Spirit.
You've seen 2 Consecrations. You've seen 1 Primordial Drake.
I mean, it was a few turns ago, but you saw how your opponent was forced to clear the board. And generally speaking, this version of Paladin doesn't run Pyromancer. So you've seen both Consecrations at this point. You've seen an equality.
I think you're feeling pretty comfortable.
Yeah, you could just go Jade Behemoth, Jade Spirit. Primordial Drake also not terrible, clears up most of the board. There was also potentially room to play Fandral Nourish.
Yeah, if you'd hit Jade Idol, you could also have played that as well. Man, Rallying Blade just not doing what it's here to do.
No, we've seen the surge in Rallying Blade after, I believe, I want to say it was Ender, was certainly started jamming in his Paladin decks in the more aggressive versions.
It's great against the mirror.
It's also great against Pink Bird, which is like my number 1 enemy, Vicious Fledgling.
For Rubber to Wings, sworn enemy is something with wings.
It's true.
Irony.
There can only be one.
Yeah. It's like Raven and I. Can only be one bird.
Well, I choose Raven every time, and
I know.
I don't feel bad saying it.
I know.
He's my waifu.
Ship you guys.
Raven Wing?
Oh, it's cute.
It is.
Dang.
And now you see why you couldn't compete
Never
with
had
that.
a chance.
Yeah. Don't worry, I'm sure you have a lot of fans in chat, so...
Feels bad me.
Feels Cora, man.
And before all of the people that hate me start spamming. Thanks, Rob. Thank you for that.
All right, so board cleared. Once again, Taiwan making a last stand with that Tarim, but...
Taiwan's last stand. Nah, Singapore seems to have had this. Woo, Tarim.
Tarim
2.0
into Deathwing, which you can't, doesn't have tall. I don't... Stonehill Defender into second Tarim is pretty much, it's that or bust.
Yeah.
And even then,
well, you can Tarim 2.0, and you can't Rallying Blade with it as well, so...
Yeah, new
that's
Tarim.
all you can pretty much do.
New Tarim, same Jade Druid.
Yep. New Tarim, who dis? Oh, Jade Golems? Too bad. Tarim!
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you?
So you clear 3? You leave yourself with a 3-7 and a 3-3. Things are looking a lot less grim. Still bad. Could be worse. You do also have the option of, running in those 2. You just leave yourself with more presence. And again, you've seen both copies of Primordial Drake. Druids struggle with dealing with large board states of mid-range minions.
Yeah,
This is a scary board for Druid.
How does this actually get dealt with?
I mean, you can just play a lot more golems, but in a world where Taiwan plays Gentle Megasaur, gets Wind Fury or +3 attack, has Rallying Blade, now you're staring down a lot of damage. In a world where Gentle Megasaur reigns supreme.
Mid-range Paladin, the movie, directed by Michael Bay. Yeah, Murlocs just start exploding everywhere. I'm like, I can't help. I'm visualizing it now.
I'm just visualizing consecrations as like nukes. Consecration, blow up a bridge. Consecration, Empire State Building's gone.
All right, well, could play that last Jade Idol there. Just go ahead and put another 3 copies of Jade Idol in the deck. Make a 13-13. Crumple discussing it with his teammates on comms there. Basically, how do we deal with this? Tom's just sitting there kind of going, well, time to just draw Tarim number 3.
V3.
Nope,
okay.
No such luck.
That might have been just a bit silly, so I suppose. Well, you're blocking quite a bit of damage still.
Bog Creeper certainly the only pick here.
I don't know. I think you want to play Megasaur this turn, so maybe Frostwolf Grunt is the pick.
I refuse to believe that Frostwolf
I don't know,
Grunt. No.
Rob. It might be Frostwolf Grunt. It's not Mogashan Warden. We can agree on that. But with Frostwolf Grunt, you can play Megasaur this turn as well.
Isn't it just better, though, to just not play the Frostwolf Grunt, just play the Bog Creeper to the next turn or something? It has to be better. You don't actually pick Frostwolf Grunt.
I think you might. It could prevent 10 damage. That's a valuable 2-drop.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
All right, well, now you're rocking Poisonous, hopefully.
Well, based on the snap pick, we saw the +3 damage, so he's just saying, nope, I'm going for it. You gotta clear this board.
Okay, so Swipe, Feral Rage, Hero Power, dead. Yep. So close. I think the Frostwolf was the right pick, Rob. I really do.
So next turn, you were going to play the Frostwolf Grunt?
I don't know that I would have Hero Powered here. I think
But
I would have
that's
played
my point. If you're
Frostwolf
gonna
Grunt
hero
this
power-
turn and have played Megasaur.
I mean, I guess
I
you're
don't know.
thinking you draw Tyrion, and then you play with the Frostwolf Grunt, but
Yes.
it hurts my heart.
I know it does.
Oh.
Yeah, you would have been dead anyway. But,
Yeah.
man, Taiwan put up quite a fight, but ultimately is going to be Singapore taking this series 3-2. Now tied up match scores for both of these teams, 2-2. This is a very close group. Taiwan absolutely wanted to win this one to be able to set themselves very far ahead from Singapore, but now, I don't know. I don't know how
Group
things
G.
are shaping up, to be perfectly honest.
Group G is certainly a lot more interesting going into the final week of Stage 1, so we'll have to take a look at the group stages shortly here. But yeah, this has certainly been an exciting series for Singapore, and they're now 2-0 in the last 2 weeks, so shout out to Singapore. They seem to have figured it out. We see here how it went down. Sequinox getting 1 win, Crumpled carrying them, getting them 2 wins, and then Malagos Taiwan and AHQ Roger respectively getting wins for Taiwan. But okay, both these teams are 2-2. Mexico is 3-1. Yeah, we'll have to see how the rest of the group pans out. But I think there is actually...
There might be a world where both of them get through, along with Mexico sitting at the top. So Mexico... All right, so here... Oh, Turkey. Oh, and Poland. Oh, man, we forgot about these guys. Yeah, this is...
Vietnam is the only team that is officially out of contention.
And look at these game records. So Mexico and Taiwan have the exact same game records, but Mexico is up 1 match. Taiwan, Turkey, Poland, Singapore all are 2-2, and these game scores are so hideously close for all 4 of these teams. Next week is going to decide so much.
Yeah, Group G is one of those groups, especially now, because Singapore won, where it is just going to come down to the wire. So obviously you guys are going to want to watch all of next week's action.
It's going to be an interesting week for this group. It absolutely will. Whichever teams are able to take it. Obviously, one team will be going up against Vietnam, who is 1-3, and then they'll go 3-2. And it's a lot of intricacies still remaining within this group, but excited to see that Singapore now has given themselves a great chance.
Well, and now we have a great chance to interview Sequinox and ask him about Charged Devilsaur. Sequinox, congratulations on the win. That's 2-0 for Singapore in your last 2 matches. Why is there a Charged Devilsaur in that deck?
What are you doing, man?
Hi guys, I'm back. Creator synergy. Yep, that's why Charge Devil Sword
Curator
is there.
synergy, Rob.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, it's just a really good answer for Priest against the Curator. It's an on-curve clear,
sure.
right? Because normally Priest has problems against 4 attack minions. So Charge Devil Sword is a really good way to clear all those Curators. And then after that, you can have Raza hero power and heal it back up.
You know what? That's
So-
totally valid.
I like it. I've been playing a lot of that deck lately. Obviously not with Charged Devil Sword, but I certainly appreciate the ingenuity. So you guys were down 0-2, I believe, and then you managed to come back up now to tie it up 2-2, and you still have a shot at getting out of groups. Is that something that's really exciting for you guys?
Yeah, we are definitely really excited. I mean, when we lost the second series, we thought ourselves that we must win the remaining in order to make it through, and I'm glad we are doing ourselves justice, by sticking to that path and winning 2 games straight, and we now just have 1 more game to win. So it's pretty good.
Sure. Yeah, just give yourself short, attainable goals. What is the preparation like each week for your team?
This week was a bit more hectic because, as you guys can tell, Envy wasn't with us. He's currently traveling in Europe, having his own fun. But this week we decided to switch it up a bit. Like, instead of bringing a really full, we brought in some aggro this time because I believe everyone saw Jade Shaman from us for the past few weeks. So we switched it up to Flood Shaman this time, and it worked out really, really well. And also Druid, we switched to Jade Druid. We are running aggro Druid for the past weeks, if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly we've heard from other players that there's value in just kind of mixing it up and not letting yourselves become predictable. So that certainly worked out for you guys here. Cora, any questions?
Really just coming up against Taiwan, who has so many fantastic players on that team. What is it really like playing against a team that is much more experienced than you guys on a global stage?
Honestly, there was no fear because we believe in that the biggest enemy is yourself, right? As long as you don't make like major misplays, or I think in Hearthstone there's like ultimately there are better opponents, so-called better opponents, but as long as you play your own best game, I'm quite sure there's no one that you can't really beat. And yeah, it's true that Taiwan is really stacked, but I really believe that we are the underdogs here, we are the dark horse, and they have a reason to fear us also. And it's not just always us fearing other teams, because we can play really well also.
No, it's good to have that
said.
confidence. Is there anything you guys want to shout out to the Singapore fans as you now pursue a 3-2 score to get out of groups?
Okay, 1 game away, guys. 1 game away from next round. We'll do it. Don't worry. Just make sure to support us next Tuesday. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, man, and good luck. We hope to see you guys pull it out next week.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Goodbye.
You know what? I went into that interview thinking Charged Devil Sword, what the hell? But it's a beast. It makes sense.
It is figuratively and literally a beast. So, yeah, words of wisdom from Sequinox. You got to appreciate someone who comes in there with confidence and says, look, you may be the bigger name on paper, but I have no fear. And, is that quote, fear is the mind killer. So, shout out to Sequinox.
Nothing to fear but fear itself.
Nothing to beer.
Yep.
Feels bad, man. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at how the action unfolded. Very unlikely result, or rather a result we weren't expecting. Peru 3-0ing the United States, who, as we pointed out, was sans Firebat. So statistically, without Firebat, the United States is
0% win rate.
Yep, 0% win rate overall. Singapore then managed to beat Taiwan in a real nail-biter best of 5. We saw Tom try to make it close there in the end with that Paladin against the Jade Druid, but simply too much. And yeah, there's 1 more week left in Stage 1 of the Hearthstone Global Games, and a lot remains to be decided. This is going to be an exciting final week.
It really will. There are so many great groups that are coming down to very little details. Can such and such beat so and so with a score of 3-1? In that case, then if I win 3-0, then I make it through. There's a lot that's going to be going down next week. I certainly thought that by week 9 most things would be figured out, but especially with Group G, which we just saw, since Singapore won, that group's still completely up in the air.
It is absolutely up in the air, but want to take some time to point out, we've been playing Standard these past 9 weeks, but got a little bit of a different game for you this weekend. If you're into Wild Hearthstone, nobody's into Wild, Rob. I was going to try to sell that, but You should tune in this Sunday. It is going to be players from the Americas, Europe, and Korea. It's going to be myself casting with That's Fitmerable, the new Sleek Admirable, the 2017 Admirable, as well as Frodan and TJ. It's going to be an exciting day of Wild action. Really looking forward to it. I know you've been playing a lot of Wild as well.
So much fun. It really is. If you guys haven't given Wild a chance, now is the time. It is an entirely different world, an entirely different meta. It's very nostalgic, especially as players like us who've been playing since alpha, open beta. It's so great to go back and be able to play with some of your favorite cards that you can no longer play with in Standard. So it's a lot of fun. Make sure you check out the tournament. It's going to be a good time.
Otherwise, go ahead and tune in next week, beginning with the UK lads over in our Poland ESL office as they help us close out Week 10 of Stage 1 of the Hearthstone Global Games. But for myself, Cora, all the ESL staff, and the Play Hearthstone Esports team, it's going to do it for Week 9. Guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you Sunday.